So we are now moving on to our second session with Brian Henze. He is an agronomy technology service manager at GROWMARK. Take it away, Brian.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen. This is a little different than in the past. For the past several years, I've been coming to Canada to present at your presentations up there. So for just a second, I'm going to click on my webcam and I'm going to wave at everybody so you can see that I am here. Hello. So I'm looking at my screen there. So good to see you all, maybe. At least you can hear me. So going to sort of build on top of what Corey was doing with the collected data. Corey did a fabulous job there of explaining how all of the machinery collects data from John Deere and others. The big thing is, okay, we collected it. We did a good job of calibrating. We've got the data. What do we do with it? So I'm going to give a couple of examples of some fields, and we're going to walk through them, and we're going to look at what we do with the data. So to Corey's point a few minutes ago, all new farm equipment comes with data collection equipment standard, unless, of course, it's a ground drive system. But anything that's hydraulic or whatever comes with that equipment in it if it's new. If it's not new, if it's an older piece of machinery, Ag Leader, Precision Planting, and a ton of other companies are making retrofit stuff to fit planters or sprayers or whatever. Climate makes a hockey puck, that we call it, that you can plug into the CAN bus system that will collect the data and send it to the cloud for you. Again, there is still calibration stuff. You still have to calibrate, but we can get the data from just about any piece of equipment. Before I came to GROWMARK 6 years ago, I was an Ag Leader precision planting dealer, and that was my job, was installing that equipment. So I know it can be done, and I know it can be collected. To Corey's point also is collected data is only as good as the effort you put into it. So if you don't calibrate, if you don't make sure that your machines are set, in a sense, it's junk in and junk out data. Now, we can correct some of the data post once it's been collected. So if you type in the wrong hybrid variety in your planter, we have software that we can go in and we can change that variety. But if you're not calibrated and your planter's jumping all over the place, we can't fix that. We just can't. So again, it's as good as the data that you put in is what you're going to get out. And what I'm going to show you here in a minute is that good collected data can show and prove return on investment. So did that new planter pay for itself, or did this chemical application pay for itself? And that's where we truly want to get to, is where are we at on our data, and is it making us money? That's the bottom line. If we're not making money, we're not in business. So I'm going to give a couple quick examples of some fertilizer data, some planting, sprayer, scouting, and harvest data. Now notice I said scouting in there. There really isn't any piece of equipment that passes your field when we're scouting, but there's still things that we can learn with the scouting data. So we're going to walk through it real quick. So I think all of you have either done a grid sampled soil test or a zone sampled soil test. Doesn't matter. You can see on the left here, I have an example of a 2.5 acre grid field. On the right, I actually have the soil test that was collected. You can see the green areas, our fertility levels are good. The reddish orange areas, yellow areas, were not where we need our fertility. So in this particular field, this was for phosphorus. We would go out and we would put some extra phosphorus on in the orange and red areas to build up that soil in that area. This technology has been around for almost 30 years. I've been in the FS system as of June 4th of this year for 30 years. I've been working for FS. I've been a plant manager. I've been a crop specialist. But 26 of those 30 years, I have worked with variable rate technology since its beginning. And this has been around for 26 years. So if we're not doing the fertility side, we really need to start, because we know that it makes a profit. It makes a difference. It makes your crop response. And I can go into example after example of what we need to do there. But I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that because I want to cover some other things in the 25 minutes I have with you. So planting data, as Corey did a great job, we can track hybrid and variety, planter population, planter accuracy. One thing that wasn't mentioned was replant. So I don't know about all of you folks, but here in Central Illinois, 2019 was an absolute disaster. We replanted 60% of our acres. And I'll be honest with you, 2020, we had a lot of replant again because we were cold and wet there at the beginning of the season. Of course, now we're hot and dry and could use some rain, but we're doing good. But replant, where did I go replant? Did I need to do a replant? You know, did I have an application of something else where I could mark where my replant was? So, and then onboard products. So if on your planter, if you're putting a starter fertilizer on, or if you're putting an insecticide on, or if you're putting something like that on, we can track where we've put that and how much of that we've put on. So to Corey's example earlier, here is actual planter data, and you can see not bad. Again, a little bit of variation in the field. You can definitely see, and hopefully my mouse shows up, but you can definitely see his corners where he had angle pattern here where he didn't have his row shutoffs exactly right, and you can see that he didn't quite get the right amount. He really dropped in these areas, so he knows that he needs to work on his on-off settings on his planter. But for the most part, you know, there's a little gap right there where it didn't kick on. You can see those, but for the most part in the center of the field, did well. Had a pass right there where he was really doing something, changing speed or something, where it really kicked in and out. But for the most part, all these passes are really good shape. And you can see the chart down here. He went from 26,000 to about 33,000 on his planting population. So he was in the range that he was shooting for. As you can also see, this is an odd-shaped field. So I want you to pay attention to this because all but one or two of my slides are actually on this same field. So sprayer data, here's where he went in and sprayed the field. And we've actually smoothed this field a little bit to try and get a better feel for it. So if you notice, you don't see the individual passes. Everything's sort of been zoned together. But timing, conditions, products, this was a corn burn down before the crop was planted, sort of a no-till type situation. And if you notice, he was really low on this side of the field. He did not get the proper amount of product on this side of the field. So as we look further on down the road, do we have chemical problems here where weeds come in and we have, you know, a weed pressure issue or whatever? You can also see up in here, he was shooting for 12 gallons to the acre. He either had a ton of overlap in his turns or something, because up here he was pushing 15, 16 gallons to the acre in these dark green areas. So again, he was over applying. And as you all know, certain chemicals have carryover properties. Are we going to have problems in next year's crop where he put too much on if he was using certain chemicals? And again, in our record keeping, you can see over at the side how many actual gallons of total material we put on. That's water included. You know, we can walk right through. He's actually got it broken down by the different products, so we can keep track of what we put on and where we put it on. So, and also almost all sprayers have a portion of their monitor where you can put in the conditions. So was it hot? Was the wind at 10 mile an hour or 5 mile an hour? But all of that kind of stuff can also be collected for 4Rs, for government regulations, and so on and so forth. So we don't want to forget that portion also. Scouting data. Now this is where I was talking about something a little different. So bugs, weeds, nutrients, diseases, timing of all of those. So what time do I walk the field? What am I looking for at different stages of the growth cycle? We're going to be looking for different things. You know, now we're looking for diseases coming in and that kind of stuff. We're pretty much done with a lot of the nutrient side if we had needed variable rate nitrogen put on or something along that line. This is actually a field that I flew, and this is one of two slides that aren't on the same field, and I apologize for that because I didn't have that other field as an image like this. But this was actually scouting data, and this is actually an image from a drone. I personally flew this about 2 weeks ago, and one of the things I want everyone to notice is you can see two distinct patterns in the field. You can see a dark green pattern, and you can see how it's all set up. That is actually plant growth. So we can literally see north and south streaks in this field. Even though this field is planted east and west, we can see north and south streaks, and we can see some east-west streaks in a few places of how the crop is actually growing better. So is that soil type? is that residue management? In other words, did they work the field north and south when they were trying to work in last year's plumage and residue and then plant it east-west this year? We've seen a lot of trouble with residue and crop not coming up through residue, and I could do a whole presentation on that. The other thing I want to point out is these east to west lines where we're missing crop. This was the second flight I had done on this field, and those lines were not there on the first flight 2 weeks earlier. And if you notice, that's actually 2 sets of wheel tracks and it's coming out and it's turning. We actually had a sprayer malfunction on this field, and they didn't know it till I actually took the image. And when they went back and looked at the sprayer, this was one of those adjustable wheel rogators, and they had the hydraulic wheels sucked in to spray 30-inch rows, and the solenoid on the right rear wheel was leaking, and it was letting the wheel push out, and the wheel had actually gone out to the 36-inch row setting. So as they were making passes, it was actually starting to run over corn. And as you can see, it got worse from this end of the field as he went north. So there's things like that that we don't know about that when we're collecting data, we will find at a later time. Another scouting trip, and this is actually boots on the ground. So collection of data, we can literally see where they walked the field manually, took pictures. You can see over on the left where we've got population counts they did at each stop where they took a picture. This one here that sort of looks like a dead fish is actually a tile spade with a corn plant in it with a ruler on the side of it, so you can see how everything is coming along. They can measure roots and whatever, but this is still collected data that helps us make decisions this winter of, did we make the right decisions, did we make the wrong decisions, and how do we use that data? And if you're scouting once a week, once every 2 weeks or whatever, you're going to know what's going on in that field in another situation. Harvest data. If you've seen me present before on data, you know that I say harvest data is our grade card for how we did. You know, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? Because the grade card tells us what hit the grain tank and what hit the scales and what we got paid for. It's really the final collection of data for the growing season, and did what we planned work. It's our way of checking. So I've got some harvest data here, and you can see this is on J2, that same field I started with last year where we had sprayer data and planting data. As you can see, the yield goes anywhere from below 100 bushel to almost 300 bushel, just a little over 280. So as you can tell, we've got some things going on around the edges of the field. If you remember, we had a chemical problem down here where we didn't quite get enough spray on earlier. Remember seeing the sprayer data where we were low? You can notice around the edges, we're not getting anything. Well, if you look at the aerial imagery, this is all trees. So are we losing this to animals? You know, are the deer coming out and eating? Or what are they doing? Whereas you get over here past the trees, you can see there's no tree line here. We didn't have that red issue. So do we need to be managing that part of the field a little differently? Another thing that you cannot tell from this image is this is a hillside right here. This lower area is actual bottom ground. This upper area is actual high ground. So we've got 25 feet of elevation change between the top half and the bottom half. But as you notice, it really didn't seem to affect us in this yield data this year. I'm sure in other years it has. But what I really want to focus on is ROI. I wanted to show you some examples for that field. I wanted you to see what was going on in that field as we did our planting, our spraying, our scouting, and so forth. Because what we really want to know is, are we making money? Are the cropping choices paying dividends? Do we need to look at changing crop choices? So around the edge of that field, let me back up one. There's a little field right here that's part of this that I don't have in this. We will show you here in a minute. Do we really need to be planting that to corn, or should that be a hay field due to what we're seeing? Do we need to change our crop protection products or practices? So in other words, is our weed control working? Is our fertility program working? You know, is there lacking fertility? I showed you a soil test, and we knew that the north end of that field was low in phosphorus. Did Mother Nature throw us a curveball, and how did we respond to it? Did we have a lot of water? Did she throw a disease at us that we don't see but once every 10 years? How did we respond to those different things, and did we get them sprayed in time to correct those problems to make us a crop? So what I have here is a true ROI, return on investment, for this field. So I took all those layers of collected data and stacked them together, put a cost to each one of those layers, put a bushel per acre price in the system, and know what my yield data is because we have that grade card, and I can tell you what parts of the field are returning an investment to me. So as I stated a minute ago, notice the little area of the field, notice the all red and orange. If we come over here, here's break even. There is 10% in orange, there is 9% in this darker orange, 7% in red, 8% in dark red. All of these areas are losing us money. The green areas, if you look, 29% of the field made us a 15% return on investment. So all of these lighter green areas here were making us return on investment. But if when you put it to the bottom line at the current crop price of $3.50 or whatever it is, American dollars that is, we're going to lose $800 on this field. It's going to take us $17,500 to plant it, and we're going to only make $16,700. If you look up here, the break-even crop price for this field is $4.09. If I don't get $4.09, I'm not going to break even on this field. We know this because of what we've done here. A few more. So here's one done by profit. So any area that is green is showing me a profit. Any area that is light green is a profit. Any area that is yellow is break even. Anything that is orange or red, I'm losing money. So again, to my point, does this area right here need to be put to hay and pasture? Does this little bitty field need to be put to hay or pasture? Another crop that I can make money off of, that the trees and the animals don't eat up all my profit. You can see down here in this dark green area, we actually had our pointer on here when we snapped the screenshot. You can see my yield in that spot was 208 bushel. My revenue was $800 at the current price. My expenses were $724. So my profit was $89 an acre right here in this spot where I took that screenshot. So this helps us decide what we're doing right or wrong with the field. You know, if we want to do it by break-even commodity price. So I know right now that my break-even commodity price is $4.09. How much more do I need to get? So everything that is in the red or orange area, I need $10 a bushel more to break even. Any area that's light green, I really needed $1 more to break even. So it's telling us what we're doing out there as far as the field itself goes. My last one that I want to put on here is break-even yield increase. So I really like this one because what this one shows me is I've taken all of my inputs. The areas that have no color are areas that I'm making money, okay? The areas that are showing me color tell me how many more bushel an acre I need in that area to just break even. So if you notice, there was a little spot out here in the middle where if I look here for the green, I really need about 15 more bushel the acre right here for this spot to break even. Whereas if I get over here on the edges, these red areas, I need 135 more bushel to the acre for these red areas to make me money. So notice this one right in here. There's no tree line here or anything, but I've still got something going on here. Do I have a water issue? Do I have, you know, a soil type issue? Do I need to change something that I'm doing to make this work out? And this is where we want to get to with all the data you're collecting. Yes, the planting data tells us if the planter's working right. It tells us if we're getting the proper downforce, the proper singulation, we're putting the seed in the ground in the moisture, we're putting on our starter fertilizer right. It tells us everything we're doing then instantaneously, but at the end of the season, were those the right things to do for the field, and are they making me money to keep my operation sustainable and in business? That's where all the data comes together and gives us a good idea of what we are truly doing on our operation, field by field, acre by acre. So, conclusion, the more data we have, the better our decision making is. So if I know that I've got a problem on that edge of that field, do I need to do something different? Collected data shows us unknown items in our fields that can be corrected. Now, I can't correct that sprayer that the wheel went out on, but I didn't know it until we collected data and we found it. So if I have a nutrient deficiency sowing or something along that line when I'm doing a scouting trip, hey, I need to go put on, foliar or feed some sulfur, or I need to do something that corrects that problem to make a better crop. And we don't know that if we're not collecting data. But all in all, return on investment is the bottom line goal. So with that, I'm done, and I'm ready for some questions.
Awesome job, Brian. So at this point, we've got a 5-minute window where if you have any questions for Brian, you can type them into the question box, and we would be happy to facilitate that. So now we are going to move on to our third session with Aaron Stavanis. Aaron is the Technical Sales Manager of Eastern Canada at the Mosaic Company. All right, take it away, Aaron.